Do you believe love can truly conquer all, even amidst 1,000 years of war, passion, and betrayal? Could hearts intertwine and break within the ancient kingdoms of medieval Spain? A time spanning from the 5th to the 15th centuries, get ready to journey back to a world where romance defied the odds, where whispers of affection echoed through castle walls and sun-drenched courtyards, sometimes leading to triumph, often to tragedy. Number 1. The Lovers of Teruel. Isabel de Segura and Juan Martínez de Marcilla. In the ancient city of Teruel, nestled amidst the rugged landscapes of Aragon, a story echoes through time, a tale of love so pure, so tragically thwarted, that it became a legend etched into the very stone of the city. This is the heartbreaking saga of Isabel de Segura and Juan Martínez de Marcilla, known simply as the Lovers of Teruel, a narrative of devotion tested by fate, wealth, and the cruel hand of timing. Their story, though set in the early 13th century, specifically around the year 1217, became a potent symbol of eternal love that transcended the bounds of earthly life. Juan Martínez de Marcilla was a young man from a noble but impoverished family in Teruel. He possessed a kind heart, a strong spirit, and a deep, unwavering love for Isabel de Segura. Isabel, on the other hand, belonged to one of the wealthiest and most influential families in the city. Her beauty was renowned, her grace unmatched, and her heart from a very young age belonged entirely to. They grew up together, their bond forging in the quiet corners of the city, in stolen glances across market squares, and in whispered promises beneath the starry Aragonese sky. Their love was a secret garden, vibrant and thriving, but surrounded by the towering walls of societal expectation and economic disparity. As they blossomed into young adulthood, their affection for each other became an open secret, a gentle murmur among the townsfolk. But the disparity in their families' fortunes was a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. When one, filled with hope and the audacity of youth, approached Isabel's father to ask for her hand in marriage, he was met with a polite but firm refusal. How could a man of such modest means provide for a daughter of Isabel's standing? Her father, a practical and powerful nobleman, believed that true love, while perhaps charming in ballads, could not sustain a household or uphold the family's honor. And standing, he decreed that Juan was unworthy of his daughter's hand. He was not a man to give up on the woman who held his entire world. Proposed a desperate wager. He would leave Teruel, travel the world, and dedicate himself to amassing a fortune worthy of Isabel. He asked for a period of 5 years, a sacred promise that if he returned within that time, wealthy and esteemed Isabel would be his. Isabel, her heart torn between duty to her father and her fervent love for Juan, agreed. Her eyes filled with tears, and a fierce determination met his, sealing the pact. Her father, confident that such an endeavor was impossible for a young man with no connections, reluctantly consented, likely viewing it as a convenient way to postpone the inevitable and hope Isabel would forget her youthful infatuation. With a heavy heart and a spirit ignited by hope, Juan bid farewell to his beloved Teruel, and to Isabel. He embarked on a perilous journey, facing the unknown, with only the memory of Isabel's smile and the weight of their promise to sustain him. He joined armies, fought bravely in distant lands, engaged in trade, and made astute investments. Through sheer grit, intelligence, and an unwavering focus on his goal, he began to accumulate the wealth he desperately needed. His reputation grew, not just for his riches, but for his integrity and courage. 5 years felt like an eternity, each day a test of endurance and faith. Back in Teruel, Isabel endured her own silent torment. Her father, initially patient, grew increasingly insistent that she consider other suitors. Wealthy, prominent noblemen from neighboring regions sought her hand, eager to consolidate their power and gain the prestige of marrying into the Segura family. Isabel, true to her vow, steadfastly refused them all, citing a vague illness or a need for more time. She clung to the hope that Juan would return, that their love would triumph against the odds. Every sunrise brought a fresh wave of hope, every sunset a pang of despair, as the 5-year deadline drew closer. The final day of the 5 years dawned, a day heavy with unspoken anticipation. Isabel woke with a nervous flutter in her stomach, her gaze constantly drifting towards the road leading into the city. Juan had not appeared. As the hours trickled by, each tick of the clock was a hammer blow to her heart. Her father, seeing her desperate anxiety and misinterpreting it as despair over Juan's probable failure, delivered an ultimatum. He had arranged a marriage for her with Don Pedro Fernandez de Azagra, a powerful nobleman from Albarracin. The wedding would take place that very evening. Isabel, her spirit crushed by the relentless pressure and the apparent failure of Juan's return, found herself trapped. To refuse would bring dishonor upon her family, her father's wrath, and possibly even endanger her own life. In that rigid society, with a heavy heart, she consented. The wedding ceremony was a blur of rich fabrics, solemn vows, and unspoken grief. She walked down the aisle, her thoughts a tumultuous mix of duty, despair, and a lingering faint hope. Just as the festivities for the wedding feast were beginning, a commotion erupted at the city gates. A weary traveler, accompanied by a small retinue, rode in, his face etched with exhaustion, but his eyes shining with triumph. It was Juan. He had made it just in the nick of time, or so he believed. He had amassed a fortune, proving himself worthy of Isabel's hand. The 5 years were up, and he was here. Fate, in its cruelest twist, had ensured he was mere hours too late. As he rushed through the familiar streets seeking out Isabel's house, he heard the sounds of celebration, music, and laughter. A terrible dread began to coil in his gut. He learned of the wedding, of Isabel's marriage to Don Pedro Fernandez de Azagra. His world, which he had so painstakingly rebuilt brick by brick over 5 arduous years, collapsed around him. Desperate, Juan found a way to slip into Isabel's bedchamber late that night, after the wedding guests had departed, and her new husband was asleep. His heart pounded in his chest, a mixture of anguish and an almost unbearable longing. He found Isabel awake and desolate, her face bathed in tears. He poured out his heart, explaining his journey, his triumph, and the unbearable agony of arriving too late. He begged her just one last time for a single kiss, a final touch to carry him through the rest of his shattered life. Isabel, though her heart ached for him, was bound by the sacred vows she had just taken. Her honor, her virtue, and the reputation of her new husband were at stake. In a voice barely above a whisper, choked with emotion, she refused him. "Juan," she pleaded, "I am now a married woman. I cannot dishonor myself or my husband, even for a love as profound as ours. Seek another love, forget me and live." Her words, spoken out of a desperate sense of duty, were a fine, crushing blow. Juan, who had braved wars, endured hardship, and amassed a fortune, could not endure the rejection from the woman he loved more than life itself. The hope that had fueled his journey extinguished, replaced by an agonizing despair, his eyes fixed on her tear-streaked face lost their light. Without another sound, he collapsed at her feet, his heart giving out under the unbearable weight of unfulfilled love. Juan Martínez de Marcilla was dead, a crabble's overcries waking her new husband, Don Pedro. He rushed to her side, demanding to know what had happened. Between sobs, Isabel confessed the entire tragic story. Her lifelong love for Juan, their pact, his arduous journey, and his heartbreaking return. She revealed the depth of her sorrow and the terrible sacrifice she had made for duty. Don Pedro, though undoubtedly stunned and perhaps hurt by her confession, he recognized a profound tragedy and the purity of the love that had just ended so violently. The next day, news of Juan's sudden death spread like wildfire through Teruel. The city mourned, unaware of the full tragic circumstances. A grand funeral was arranged, and Juan's body lay in state in the church of San Pedro. As the funeral procession moved through the streets, a veiled woman, dressed in mourning clothes, pushed through the crowd and approached Juan's coffin. It was Isabel. Her face was pale, her eyes haunted by grief, but there was a fierce determination in her gaze. Before the assembled mourners, she lifted her veil and declared, in a voice filled with profound sorrow, "This is the man I truly loved, and for whom I would have died." She leaned over his still form, pressing her lips against his cold ones. A kiss finally given, but tragically too late. As their lips met, a gasp rippled through the crowd. Isabel de Segura, her heart broken beyond repair, gave a final sigh and collapsed upon Juan's body. She, too, was dead, reunited with her beloved, in death, having been denied that union in life. The city of Teruel was plunged into profound mourning. The sheer depth of their love and the tragedy of their fate moved everyone. The authorities, recognizing the sanctity of their bond, decreed that Juan and Isabel should be buried together side by side in the very church where Juan's funeral had been held. Their tomb, located in the mausoleum of the lovers in the Church of San Pedro, became a pilgrimage site for centuries. Their effigies, carved in alabaster, lie eternally, side by side, their hands not quite touching, a poignant symbol of the love denied in life, but affirmed in death. The tale of Isabel and Juan remains a testament to the enduring power of love, the cruelty of fate, and the timeless tragedy of a passion that could not be contained by worldly constraints. Their story is a whisper from the past, reminding us that sometimes the most profound connections are found not in grand triumphs, but in the quiet, heartbreaking sacrifices made for love. Number 2. El Cid and Ximena Diaz. In the annals of Spanish history, few figures loom as large or cast as long a shadow as Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, the legendary El Cid Campeador. His name evokes images of a fearless warrior, a strategic genius, and a steadfast champion of Christian Spain during the tumultuous period of the Reconquista, the centuries-long struggle against the Moorish kingdom. Yet, behind the epic battles and political maneuvering, there existed a love story, one that began not with romantic vows, but with duty, resentment, and a profound journey towards mutual respect and unwavering partnership. This is the tale of El Cid and his wife, Ximena Diaz, a bond forged in conflict and tempered by exile and shared adversity. The beginnings of their relationship were far from idyllic. Ximena Diaz was a noblewoman of high standing, the daughter of Count Diego Fernández de Oviedo, a powerful figure in the court of King Ferdinand I of Castile. Her family was connected to the highest echelons of the Castilian nobility, and her lineage commanded respect. Rodrigo Diaz, while a valiant knight and a rising star in the king's service, came from a lesser noble family, though his prowess in battle was already earning him renown. The initial connection between Rodrigo and Ximena was steeped in tragedy and blood. According to early legends, though historians debate the specifics, Rodrigo had killed Ximena's father, Count Diego, in a duel. The reasons for the duel vary in the telling. Some say it was a dispute over land, others a matter of honor, a challenge issued by Diego to Rodrigo, perhaps spurred by jealousy or a perceived slight. Regardless of the exact provocation, the outcome was fatal. Count Diego fell by Rodrigo's sword. Ximena, heartbroken and consumed by grief and a fierce sense of justice, appealed directly to the king, King Alfonso VI of Castile, and Leon, Ferdinand's successor. In a society where honor was paramount and blood feuds were common, such a plea was expected. She could have sought Rodrigo's exile or execution. However, in a surprising turn of events, possibly guided by shrewd royal advisors, Ximena made an extraordinary request. She asked the king to command Rodrigo to marry her. Her reasoning was complex. Perhaps she saw an opportunity to bind her family's future to a rising star, even one stained with her father's blood. Perhaps she believed that through marriage she could reclaim some measure of her family's lost honor. Or perhaps she simply saw it as a means to prevent further bloodshed and secure her own position. More profoundly, it might have been an act of faith. A belief that even in the darkest of circumstances, a new path could be forged. King, recognizing Rodrigo's invaluable military talent, and perhaps seeing the political advantage of uniting two powerful families, agreed to the marriage. Thus, in 1074, Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar and Jimena Diaz were joined in matrimony. It was a marriage of royal decree, born out of duty, grief, and a forced reconciliation, not out of passion. Jimena entered the union with a heart likely heavy with sorrow and resentment, marrying the man who had orphaned her. Rodrigo, for his part, was bound to a woman whose family he had wronged. Their early years together must have been challenging, marked by unspoken tensions and the specter of the past. Yet over time a remarkable transformation occurred. Jimena proved to be far more than a dutiful wife. She was intelligent, resilient, and possessed a quiet strength that belied her gentle demeanor. As Rodrigo's career flourished, as he fought battles for his king, gained fame for his military prowess, and was eventually bestowed with the title Campeador, the champion, and Cid, an honorific from the Arabic Sayyid, meaning Lord. Jimena stood by him. She managed their growing household, oversaw their estates, and bore their children two daughters, Cristina and Maria, and a son, Diego. Their relationship deepened, evolving from an arrangement of duty into a bond of profound respect and mutual affection. Jimena became Rodrigo's steadfast confidant and supporter. She endured his repeated exiles from the capricious King Alfonso VI, maintaining their family's dignity and loyalty even when her husband was unjustly banished. When El Cid was sent away from Castile, leading his own army as a mercenary for hire, first for Moorish rulers and then independently conquering Valencia, Jimena remained a pillar of strength. The most poignant testament to their enduring partnership came during Rodrigo's final epic campaign, the conquest of Valencia. After years of fighting, strategizing, and building his own independent fiefdom, El Cid finally captured the great Moorish city of Valencia in 1094. It was a monumental achievement, transforming him from a banished knight into a powerful ruler, and what was one of his first acts upon securing the city? He sent for his family. Jimena, accompanied by their children, undertook the perilous journey from Castile to Valencia. She rode through contested lands, crossing battlefields and enduring hardships, all to be reunited with her husband and share in his triumph. Her arrival in Valencia was a moment of immense joy and vindication for El Cid. From the heights of the Alcazar, Rodrigo showed her the vast fertile plains of Valencia stretching out before them. A kingdom he had won with his own sword, now shared with his beloved wife. This was not merely a conquest. It was the establishment of a home, a legacy for their family. Jimena embraced her role as the Lady of Valencia with grace and wisdom. She helped govern the city, her presence bringing stability and a sense of permanence to Rodrigo's hard-won domain. She was not merely a figurehead, she was a partner, advising him, comforting him, and sharing the burdens of leadership. The chronicles speak of her unwavering loyalty and courage, particularly in the face of subsequent Almoravid attacks on Valencia. When the city was besieged, Jimena, rather than shrinking from danger, rallied the citizens, demonstrating her own formidable resolve. She even donned armor and rode among the defenders, inspiring them with her bravery, a true warrior queen in spirit if not in title. Their love was not the fiery passion of youthful infatuation, but a slow, burning, enduring flame, forged in the crucible of shared adversity. It was built on respect for each other's strength, loyalty in the face of betrayal, and a deep understanding of the sacrifices required to navigate a brutal medieval world. They faced everything together: royal disfavor, dangerous campaigns, the sorrow of losing their only son in battle, and the constant threat of war. When Rodrigo Diaz de Bivar finally succumbed to illness in Valencia in 1099, Jimena was by his side. Her grief was profound, but her strength did not falter. Knowing that the city would fall without El Cid's legendary presence, she took charge, attempting to preserve his legacy. In a final act of strategic brilliance attributed to her, she had Rodrigo's body placed upright on his warhorse Babieca and paraded through the city to make the besieging Almoravids believe El Cid was still alive and leading his forces. This act of deception allowed her and the remaining Castilian forces to evacuate Valencia and safely retreat to Castile, carrying Rodrigo's body and ensuring his honorable burial. Jimena Diaz lived out her remaining years in Castile, a respected widow, a testament to her enduring spirit and the strength of the bond she had forged with the legendary El Cid. Their story is a powerful reminder that love can manifest in many forms, not just in whispered promises or stolen kisses, but in unwavering loyalty, shared sacrifice, and the quiet, unbreakable partnership of two individuals facing the world together. It is a love that transcended a bloody beginning, defying expectations and carving its own enduring legend in the heart of Spain. Number 3. Walida bint al-Mustaka and Ibn Zaydun. In the dazzling, intellectually vibrant city of Córdoba, the jewel of Al-Andalus, during the tumultuous yet culturally rich period of the Taifa kingdoms, in the love story unfolded that defied convention, burned with poetic intensity. This is the tale of Princess Walida bint al-Mustaka, a woman of extraordinary beauty, wit, and scandalous independence, and Ibn Zaydun, the preeminent poet of his age, whose words could charm birds from trees and melt the coldest of hearts. Their affair was a tempest of passion, intellect, and jealousy, leaving an indelible mark on Andalusian literature and society. Walida bint al-Mustaqfi was no ordinary princess. The daughter of Muhammad III of Córdoba, the last Umayyad caliph of the city, she inherited not only royal blood, but also a fierce intellect and an unyielding spirit. Born into privilege, she rejected the traditional confines of female life in a conservative society. Walida was a poet of considerable talent herself, and she ran a literary salon in her palace, attracting the finest minds, scholars and poets of Córdoba. She was renowned for her beauty, her sharp wit, and her shocking audacity. She walked unveiled in public, wore transparent robes, and even embroidered verses of her own poetry on the hems of her dresses, verses that declared her independence and defiance, such as, "I am fit for high position, and I am worthy of my pride." She was a trailblazer, a feminist before the term existed, captivating and intimidating all who met her. Into her orbit stepped Abu al-Walid Ahmad ibn Zaydun, a young man of noble birth already celebrated. As the most eloquent and gifted poet of Córdoba, he was handsome, charming, and possessed a poetic genius that resonated deeply with Walida's own artistic soul. When their paths crossed, perhaps at one of Walida's famous salons, or in the cultured circles of Córdoba, the attraction was immediate and electrifying. It was a union of two brilliant minds, two passionate souls, and two powerful personalities. Their love affair quickly became the talk of Córdoba. It was not a discreet, hidden romance. It was a public declaration of passion, conducted with a flamboyant disregard for societal norms. They exchanged passionate letters filled with exquisite poetry that expressed their longing, their joy, and the depth of their devotion. Their verses, celebrated and recited throughout Al-Andalus, paint a vivid picture of their intense connection. Ibn Zaydun, captivated by Walada's beauty and intellect, adored her, dedicating some of his most famous odes to her. He celebrated her eyes, her grace, her wit, and her very essence, comparing her to the moon and the stars. Walada, for her part, reciprocated his passion with equal fervor. She admired his poetic genius and his sharp intellect. Their love was a meeting of equals, a duel of wits as much as a communion of hearts. They reveled in each other's company, spending countless hours in libraries, gardens, and at literary gatherings, their love story unfolding against the backdrop of Cordoba's golden age. However, a love so grand and so public was bound to attract envy and ultimately trouble. Walada, fiercely independent, was not a woman to be confined to a single relationship, even with a man as captivating as Ibn Zaydun. She had other admirers and perhaps other lovers. Ibn Zaydun, for his part, was ambitious and prone to indiscretion. The most famous catalyst for their downfall was his affair with a slave girl named Muya al-Kurtubaya, who happened to be Walada's own maid. When Walada discovered the betrayal, her fury knew no bounds. She was not a woman to suffer silently. Her revenge was swift and poetic. She publicly denounced Ibn Zaydun in cutting, sarcastic verses, accusing him of infidelity and hypocrisy. She mocked his poetic skills and his character. Their passionate love letters were replaced by bitter, biting epigrams. The intellectual and emotional connection that had once bound them so tightly now fueled a public feud, a war of words that scandalized Cordoba. Ibn Zaydun, wounded by Walada's betrayal and her public humiliation, responded with his own laments and apologies, begging for her forgiveness in verse. But Walada, once scorned, never fully forgave. Their relationship, once a beacon of romantic and intellectual passion, shattered into fragments of resentment and regret. Breakdown of his relationship with Walada was not Ibn Zaydun's only downfall. His political ambitions also led him into trouble. He became involved in a conspiracy against the powerful vizier Ibn Jawhar, the effective ruler of Cordoba after the collapse of the caliphate. For his involvement, Ibn Zaydun was imprisoned. From his prison cell he wrote some of his most melancholic and moving poetry, yearning for Walada, for the beauty of Cordoba, and for the freedom he had lost. His most famous ode, the Nunai Ya, is a masterpiece of longing and regret, addressed implicitly to Walada and the city they shared. He eventually escaped from prison and fled Cordoba, spending the rest of his life in exile, first in Seville under the patronage of King al-Mu'tamid, another poet-king whose own love story we will delve into, and later in other cities of Al-Andalus. Despite his continued poetic fame, the wound of his separation from Walada never truly healed. He continued to write about her both in praise and sorrow for the rest of his life. Walada, despite the public drama and heartbreak, maintained her independent spirit. She never married, choosing instead to live a life of intellectual pursuit and continued poetic expression. She remained a powerful and respected figure in Cordoba's literary circles, her salons continuing to draw the brightest minds. She lived to an old age, a testament to her resilience and defiance, in a world that sought to constrain women of her stature. The story of Walada bint al-Mustaqi and Ibn Zaydun is not a tale of a love that triumphs over all, but one that explores the complex, often volatile interplay of passion, intellect, ego, and societal constraints. It is a love born of mutual admiration and intense connection, but ultimately undone by human frailties, jealousy, infidelity, and pride. Their legacy lives on, not just in historical accounts, but in the enduring beauty of their poetry, which even in its most bitter moments speaks of a love that was once so profoundly real and so powerfully felt. Their story serves as a reminder that even in the most cultured and sophisticated societies, love can be a double-edged sword capable of inspiring both the highest artistic expression and the deepest, most agonizing heartbreak. Number 4. King al-Mu'tamid of Seville, and Rumaikia. Esteemed. Step back into the glittering, sun-drenched courts of 11th century Al-Andalus, specifically to the vibrant Taifa kingdom of Seville, where poetry flowed like wine and cultural brilliance illuminated the age. Here we encounter a love story of immense opulence, passionate devotion, and ultimately heart-wrenching tragedy. The tale of Abu al-Qasim, Muhammad ibn Abad, known as al-Mu'tamid. Rumaikia, a former slave girl whose beauty and wit captured his heart entirely. Theirs was a romance that transcended social barriers, indulged in lavish whims, and suffered the brutal collapse of a kingdom. Al-Mu'tamid was a king of extraordinary talent and charisma. He was not merely a ruler, he was a celebrated poet, a patron of the arts, and a man of refined tastes. His court in Seville was a beacon of culture, attracting scholars, musicians, and poets from across the Islamic world. He reveled in the pleasures of life, in beautiful verses, in good company, and in the love of women. But his heart found its true anchor in one woman who was far removed from the royal lineage he was expected to marry. Her name was Esteemed. She was a slave girl, perhaps of Iberian origin, known for her extraordinary beauty, her sharp intellect, and a playful spirit. The legend of their first meeting is as poetic as any verse Al-Mu'tamid ever penned. One day, while enjoying a leisurely stroll with his vizier and fellow poet Ibn Ammar along the banks of the Guadalquivir River, Al-Mu'tamid improvised a line of poetry. Ibn Ammar struggled to complete the couplet. Suddenly, a clear, melodious voice from a nearby garden completed it perfectly. What good armor for a warrior if frozen? Al-Mu'tamid was stunned, turned to find a young slave girl washing clothes by the river, her eyes sparkling with intelligence. It was Esteemed. Captivated by her wit, her beauty, and her effortless poetic talent, he instantly fell in love, purchased her from her master on the spot, freed her and elevated her to the highest position possible. His queen. He bestowed upon her the name Rumaikia, a diminutive of Rumaik, reflecting her beauty and grace. From that moment on, Rumaikia became the center of Al-Mu'tamid's world. Their love was passionate, extravagant, and deeply affectionate. Al-Mu'tamid spared no expense to fulfill her every whim, no matter how whimsical or challenging. One famous anecdote recounts how Rumaikia, looking out at the gardens of Seville, longed to walk in the snow, a sight rarely seen in the warm climate of Andalusia. Al-Mu'tamid, determined to grant her wish, ordered vast quantities of almonds, sugar, and spices to be brought from distant lands. He had them ground and mixed and spread across the palace grounds, creating a dazzling, fragrant imitation of snow for his beloved to frolic in. Another tale speaks of her desire to walk on rosewater, and Al-Mu'tamid filled a great pool with it for her enjoyment. Such was the depth of his devotion and the boundless resources of his kingdom, all at her disposal. Rumaikia was not merely a beautiful face or an indulged queen. She was intelligent, witty, and a true companion to Al-Mu'tamid, sharing his love for poetry and intellectual pursuits. They were a golden couple reigning over Seville in an era of unparalleled artistic and literary flourishing. Their love was a source of inspiration for many, a symbol of the possibilities of passion and power. However, the opulent world they had built was precarious. The Taifa kingdoms of Al-Andalus, though culturally rich, were politically fragmented and militarily weak. To the south, in North Africa, a formidable new power was rising, the Almoravids, a devout and austere Berber dynasty. Christian kingdoms of the north, united and emboldened by the Reconquista, were also pressing down, demanding tribute and encroaching on Andalusian territories. Al-Mu'tamid, recognizing the growing threat from the north, made a fateful decision. Rather than fall prey to the Christians, he appealed for help from the Almoravid leader, Yusuf ibn Tashfin, to repel the Castilian advances. His famous words, "Better to be a camel driver in Africa than a swineherd in Castile," reflected the desperate choice he faced. Yusuf ibn Tashfin arrived with his formidable army and initially helped defeat the Christian forces at the Battle of Segura in 1086. The Almoravids, once invited, had no intention of leaving. Yusuf ibn Tashfin, witnessing the decadence and disunity of the Taifa kings, decided to conquer Al-Andalus for himself. Believing it had strayed from true Islamic piety, one by one, the Taifa kingdoms fell. Seville, the jewel in the crown, was besieged in 1091. Al-Mu'tamid, the poet king, transformed into a valiant warrior, leading the defense of his beloved city with courage and desperation. Rumaykaya, his queen, stood by him, sharing his ordeal. The Almoravid siege was relentless. After a fierce resistance, Al-Mu'tamid and his entire family, including Rumaykaya, were captured. Their opulent world, their reign, their freedom were all brutally stripped away. The Almoravids, under Yusuf ibn Tashfin, exiled Al-Mu'tamid and his family to Agmat, a remote and harsh prison fortress in Morocco. The journey was arduous and humiliating. The once proud king, who had lived a life of boundless luxury, was forced to walk in chains, his beloved queen and children accompanying him in utter destitution. Rumaykaya, who had once walked on almond snow and rosewater, now endured the harsh realities of exile, hunger, and the loss of everything she held dear. Yet through this unimaginable suffering their love endured. Al-Mu'tamid, despite his despair, continued to write poetry, often lamenting his lost kingdom, his fallen glory, and the suffering of his family. Particularly his cherished Rumaykaya, he penned moving verses about her enduring loyalty and strength amidst their shared ordeal. He wrote of his longing for their past life and his sorrow for the privations she now suffered. Al-Mu'tamid died in Agmat in 1095, just 4 years after his capture. A broken man, his heart heavy with grief for his lost kingdom and his beloved family. Rumaykaya outlived him, her exact fate after his death less clear, but it is believed she died in exile as well. Her life, a testament to a love that flourished in luxury and endured through the harshest of trials. The story of Al-Mu'tamid and Rumaykaya is a poignant reminder that even the grandest loves and the most lavish lives are subject to the caprices of fate and the brutal realities of power. Their tale speaks of a love that was both intensely personal and deeply intertwined with the destiny of a kingdom. It is a story of how a king's devotion could elevate a humble slave girl to a queen, how lavish affection could inspire poetic genius, and how, in the face of utter ruin, true love could still offer a measure of solace, even as it mourned a world irrevocably lost. Number 5. Queen Urraca of Leon and Alfonso, the First of Aragon, the Battler. Not all love stories are bathed in the golden glow of romance and happily ever afters. Some are forged in the crucible of power, ambition, and political necessity, and they often lead to a fiery clash of wills rather than a harmonious union. Such is the compelling, tumultuous, and ultimately disastrous tale of Queen Urraca of Leon and King Alfonso, famously known as the Battler. Their marriage meant to unite two mighty Iberian kingdoms and secure the future of Christian Spain. In the 12th century, instead devolved into years of bitter civil war, making it one of the most dramatic and destructive royal unions. She was the daughter of King Alfonso VI of Leon and Castile, one of the most powerful monarchs of his age, who had expanded his realm significantly, and even conquered Toledo. With the tragic death of her only brother Sancho in battle, Urraca suddenly found herself the sole legitimate heir to a vast and complex kingdom. She was a woman of intelligence, strong will, and fierce determination, traits inherited from her powerful father. She was accustomed to authority and expected to rule in her own right, not merely as a consort. Alfonso I, the King of Aragon and Navarre, was her exact counterpart. Known as the Battler, El Batallador, for his relentless military campaigns against the Moors and his aggressive expansion of his own kingdom, he was a formidable warrior. Pious, austere, and equally strong-willed. He believed in direct action, in the might of the sword, and in his own absolute authority. He was not a man to compromise or to share power easily. The marriage between Urraca and Alfonso, celebrated in 1109, was a purely political maneuver. King Alfonso VI, on his deathbed, arranged the union to secure his daughter's succession and to unite the forces of Leon, Castile, and Aragon against the burgeoning Almoravid threat from the south. The idea was to create a powerful Christian superkingdom that could push back the Muslim advance more effectively. It seemed on paper a brilliant strategic alliance. However, the ink on the marriage contract was barely dry before the inherent incompatibility of the two monarchs became glaringly obvious. Urraca, fiercely independent and aware of her rights as a sovereign queen, immediately clashed with Alfonso, who expected to rule as king consort, effectively taking control of her kingdom. He viewed her not as an equal co-ruler, but as a queen whose domain should be subservient to his military leadership. Their personalities were like flint and steel. Urraca resented Alfonso's attempts to impose his Aragonese nobles and customs on her Castilian and Leonese court. Alfonso, for his part, found Urraca's insistence on her own authority and her penchant for forming her own political alliances maddening. Political alliance quickly fractured under the weight of their personal animosity. Their relationship was marred by suspicion, open hostility, and even violence. There are accounts of Alfonso physically abusing Urraca, and she, in turn, rallied her own supporters among the Leonese and Castilian nobility. The royal bedchamber became a battlefield, and the entire peninsula suffered the consequences. The marriage, intended to bring peace and strength instead, ignited a brutal civil war that lasted for years. Raymondez, who would later become Alfonso VII, also became a pawn in this power struggle. His Castilian and Leonese supporters viewed him as the rightful heir, and feared Alfonso I would disinherit him in favor of any children he might have with Urraca. This added another layer of intrigue and conflict to the already strained relationship. Chroniclers of the time paint a vivid picture of the chaos. The kingdoms of Leon and Castile were torn apart by competing factions, loyal to Urraca, to Alfonso, or to the young Alfonso Raymondez. Battles raged. Castles changed hands, and the Reconquista was stalled as Christian fought Christian. The marriage was supposed to be a bulwark against the Almoravids, but instead it weakened the Christian front, allowing the Muslim forces to consolidate their gains in the south. After years of this destructive impasse, with no children born to them, and the kingdoms in turmoil, the marriage was finally annulled by the Pope in 1114. The reasons given were consanguinity. They were distantly related, a common excuse for royal annulments. But the true reason was the utter breakdown of the union and the threat it posed to the stability of the Iberian Peninsula. Even after the annulment, the conflict did not immediately cease. Alfonso I continued to claim parts of Urraca's territory and even continued to fight for them. Urraca, however, was a formidable queen. She spent the rest of her reign consolidating her power, asserting her authority over her rebellious nobles, and securing the succession for her son. She proved to be a remarkably resilient and effective ruler, in her own right navigating treacherous political waters. Urraca died in 1126, leaving her son Alfonso VII firmly established on the throne of Leon and Castile. Alfonso I, the Battler, continued his relentless campaigns against the Moors in Aragon until his death in 1134. Their story is a stark reminder that in medieval royalty, love was often a secondary consideration to politics and power. Their union, meant to be a strategic masterpiece, was a human catastrophe. It is a love story in a twisted sense of two incredibly strong-willed individuals who simply could not bend to each other, two powerful monarchs who would rather wage war than surrender an inch of their authority. It highlights the brutal realities of royal marriages, where personal happiness was sacrificed for dynastic ambition, and where the absence of affection could ignite a conflagration that consumed entire kingdoms. The tale of Urraca and Alfonso I is a powerful testament to the destructive force of a marriage devoid of understanding, respect, and ultimately love, leaving a legacy of division rather than the unity it poured out. Number 6. The Legend of the Bridge of the Knights, Puente de los Caballeros, in Leon. Nestled in the green heart of Leon, a province renowned for its rich history and ancient legends, stands a bridge known as Puente de los Caballeros, the Bridge of the Knights. While its stones are real and its arches have spanned the river for centuries, the story, woven into its very foundation, is one of enduring love, impossible tasks, and a knight's unwavering devotion. This is a less known but equally captivating medieval love story, a legend that whispers of the power of commitment and the extraordinary feats inspired by true affection. Centuries ago, in the flourishing kingdom of Leon, there lived a king who possessed a treasure more precious than gold or jewels, his only daughter, a princess whose beauty was only surpassed by her gentle spirit. She was beloved by all, and many noble knights and princes from across the land sought her hand. However, her heart, in the way of many princesses and legends, had been captured by a brave and virtuous knight from a distant, less prominent land. He was not as wealthy or as politically powerful as some of her other suitors, but his courage, his honor, and his profound love for her were undeniable. King, a just but cautious ruler, was fond of the knight, but he was also acutely aware of his daughter's royal standing and the political implications of her marriage. He believed in testing the worthiness of a suitor, ensuring that his daughter would be entrusted to a man of true merit and unwavering commitment. One day, a terrible affliction befell the beloved princess. She fell gravely ill, her health fading with each passing day. The royal physicians were helpless, their remedies proving useless. Despair settled over the court like a thick fog. Finally, an ancient sage, known for his wisdom and knowledge of forgotten cures, was summoned. He declared that the only remedy for the princess's mysterious malady was a rare flower that bloomed only at the very edge of the world, in a treacherous, monster-haunted land, and only under the light of a specific moon. The journey was perilous, considered impossible by many, and the flower had to be brought back before the next full moon, or all hope would be lost. The king, desperate to save his daughter, offered a reward beyond measure: the hand of his daughter in marriage to any knight who could bring back the life-saving bloom. Many valiant knights, eager for glory and the princess's hand, set out on the quest. One by one they returned defeated, or never returned at all, victims of the perilous journey or the monstrous guardians of the flower. But the princess's beloved knight was not among those who failed. His love for her was a fire that burned brighter than any obstacle. Without hesitation, he embarked on the impossible quest. He faced roaring rivers, scaled jagged mountains, battled mythical beasts, and endured unimaginable hardships. His only sustenance was the thought of the princess's smile, his only guide the unwavering hope of saving her. Days turned into weeks, and just as the specified noon approached, he found the miraculous flower blooming in a hidden, perilous glen. With the precious bloom carefully protected, he turned back, racing against time, driven by love and a desperate urgency. Back in Leon, as the final day of the sage's deadline dawned, the princess's condition worsened. The court was in despair. King, convinced that no one could succeed in such a perilous quest, believed his daughter was lost. In a final desperate act of parental love, he made a terrible decision. He had administered a powerful but ultimately futile potion to the princess, hoping it would ease her suffering as she neared her end. The princess, weakened and barely conscious, took the potion, believing her knight had failed. her hope extinguishing with the setting sun just as night fell, and the princess seemed to draw her last breath. A solitary figure, weary and battered but triumphant, galloped into the city gates. It was the knight clutching the miraculous flower. He had made it, but only to witness the mournful tolling of bells and the somber faces of the palace guards. He was too late. His love, his princess, was gone. King, overwhelmed with grief and remorse, seeing the flower and realizing his terrible mistake, collapsed in despair. He looked at the knight, then at his seemingly lifeless daughter, and made a new, desperate vow. If the princess could still be saved, if the knight's flower held any power, he would grant his daughter's hand to him and raise a monument to his devotion. Miraculously, the flower's potency, combined with the king's potion, and perhaps the sheer will of love, began to work its magic. The princess stirred her eyes, slowly fluttering open, her color returning. She was alive. But the king, in his haste, had made another vow earlier that day before the knight's return and the princess's revival. In a moment of despair, he had promised his daughter's hand to a powerful neighboring lord who had offered his armies to secure the kingdom. During the crisis, if he could complete and impart, the lord, a clever and ambitious man, had scoffed at the impossible demand. Now, with his daughter miraculously restored, the king found himself in a terrible dilemma. His first vow, made in desperation, now stood in the way of his daughter's true love. The noble lord was due to arrive at dawn, expecting the princess's hand. The knight, seeing the renewed life in his princess's eyes, and learning of the king's new predicament, made a swift, determined decision. He would not let any obstacle, even an impossible one, stand between him and his love. He gathered all the available masons, engineers, and laborers in the city. Throughout the night, under the unwavering gaze of the moon and the watchful eyes of the relieved but anxious king, the knight personally led the effort. He inspired the workers with his tireless energy, his hands working alongside theirs, pushing them beyond what they thought possible. He used every ounce of his ingenuity, his strength, and the unwavering conviction of his love. As the first rays of dawn pierced the eastern sky, illuminating the river, an impossible sight greeted the approaching lord and his retinue. Spanning the previously unbridgeable chasm was a magnificent stone bridge, strong and sturdy, its arches gleaming in the morning light. It was complete a testament to an overnight miracle driven by the purest form of love and determination. The visiting lord, dumbfounded, had no choice but to concede. King, overjoyed and profoundly humbled, kept a sacred promise. The knight who had twice performed the impossible was given the hand of his beloved princess. Their wedding was a celebration unlike any other, attended by a grateful populace who had witnessed the power of true love. The bridge, built by the knight's determination, still stands today, a silent monument to this enduring legend. It is called the Puente de los Caballeros, the Bridge of the Knights, forever linking the tale of a princess, a brave knight, an impossible quest, and the profound truth that true love can conquer any challenge, even building a bridge overnight. This legend, passed down through generations in Leon, reminds us that courage, self-sacrifice, and an unbreakable promise can turn the most fantastical dreams into tangible reality, leaving behind not just a story, but a lasting symbol of devotion.